Now, how a virtual assistant can help. Shout out to Hire Heroes. If you're looking for a vetted virtual assistant, somebody who is operating in the top 1% of delegated tasks, and then you feel like you're drowning and trying to do it all yourself, it's extremely hard to stay on top of contacting everyone that needs to be contacted. If we're talking about every lead that needs to be called, every client that needs to be followed up with, you get really busy. You might start to let some of these fall through the cracks. And that's, again, going to really hurt your business, hurt your revenue if you're not getting a hold of people that you need to get a hold of. So I highly recommend heading over to hireheroes.com and grabbing a vetted virtual assistant from us now so you don't lose out on these important conversations that you need to be having. So how a virtual assistant can help with your contact rate, again, whether how you want to structure this follow-up, this contact rate, this contact funnel, I guess is kind of how I look at it. If you're a brand new agent and you're trying to figure this out, your contact funnel might be almost exclusively you with a little bit of automation. If you are an established agent, you might do some of this contact funnel. You make a few phone calls day one of the lead, and then maybe you have an admin or a virtual assistant that does a lot of the follow-up from there if you can't get a hold of them. If you're an agency owner, your contact funnel might not include you at all, but maybe your LOAs are sprinkled in there. And then you have virtual assistants who are trying to continuously get these folks to schedule an appointment or to get them back on the phone to have that phone call. I think utilizing a virtual assistant can easily double or triple your contact rate if you're not using any type of admin. If you think you can do this all yourself, or you think you can do this all with just automations, I shared this story yesterday, but we had a client come to us at Hire Heroes, and they were trying to exclusively use automations. They were trying to avoid the phone entirely, and they were only getting about 15% of leads to schedule appointments. And that was really telling when I was able to have that conversation. I'm a fan of automations where they make sense, where you can fit them in. I look at it like seasoning on a good steak. You want to have some type of seasoning. But I think if you're exclusively doing automations and you're trying to avoid the phone, or you're doing very little phone work, you're probably missing out on a ton of opportunity. So having a virtual assistant come in and help you stay on top of this communication, stay on top of these follow-ups, and they're making these phone calls, I think it will double or triple your contact rate if you're not utilizing the phone properly. So you get to stay in your highest revenue generating activity. I talk about this all the time with a virtual assistant. Instead of doing something like scheduling appointments to put on a calendar, especially if you're selling face to face still, you get paid when you write applications. That is your highest revenue generating activity as an agent. So why would you do all of these low level tasks like managing a CRM, managing your calendar, managing emails coming in? This is something a $10 virtual assistant, again, shout out to Hire Heroes, they can help you with. You don't have to do every single little task in your business, in your agency. You can have somebody else help you, and you'll see that increase in contact rate. And if you double or triple your contact rate, what do you think happens to your closing percentage? It follows your contact rate. Your closing percentage should essentially double or triple right along with your contact rate going up. What is the perfect percentage? This was a question I got yesterday. What percentage of my leads, or how many of my leads should I be able to get a hold of? That's a big variable depending on the lead and how you're contacting them. Personally, I think the minimum is 60%. So at least 6 out of 10 leads, you should be able to have a conversation on the phone with, not necessarily a presentation, but at least a conversation. And if you're really strong with your follow-up attempts, you're using automation, you have a virtual assistant, you're on the phone a lot, maybe you can get that closer to 80%. There will be a portion of people that you can just never get on the phone. I was talking to an agent the other day where they were struggling to get a client, their own client that they had written an application for. They couldn't get a MedSub client to pick up their phone again. So, like, you're going to have people that are really hard to get a hold of. But if you can get to a, say, a 20% a 20% fall off rate where, 1 out of 5 you can't get a hold of, but you're talking to 4 out of 5, you're winning big time. Because I'd say the average contact rate with most agents is probably around 20%. Most agents are probably only getting a hold of 1 out of 5. And it could be for a variety of different reasons. Could be that they're not calling their leads. A lot of agents don't even call their leads. Could be that their phone number is flagged as spam. I mean, again, there's all these reasons why they don't get a hold of their leads. But if you can change that and you're not the average agent and you can get to 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 people and you're actually talking to them, you're going to see your sales skyrocket with your contact rate. So again, some best practices on how you can delegate to a virtual assistant to increase your contact rate, having very clean scripting in place, making sure, I think a simple thing you can do is have them listen to you be on the phone for a couple days. Maybe they're listening to some previously recorded phone calls that you've done with clients or with leads. Then they can have a PDF of a script they need to follow. Maybe there's some reporting that they're either creating for you, or there's some automated reporting from the dialer that they're using that you can look at. You can review some of their recorded calls once they start making phone calls. There's so much, honestly, that a virtual assistant can do to help you. They can help with these automated follow-ups, these automated touch points that I talked about. Shout out again to 7-Figure CRM. If you don't have a system that can do automation, head over to 7figurecrm.com right now. Our CRM system can do automated touch points, and it can be completely customized based on your desires, how you want it set up. And if you don't know how to use it, your virtual assistant can also help you set up these automations, help set up your contact funnel. So I think this one is huge. So again, just to kind of recap here, we're getting towards the end of this, how you can increase your contact rate with leads and clients, making sure your phone number. And again, guys, if you have any questions, drop them in the stream below, whether you're watching live or replay. I'll try to get to them. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have about this. But just to kind of recap this, because I think, if you just do some of these simple things I was able to cover with you today, I think you'll see that contact rate go way up. So, number one, making sure your phone number is not showing up as spam when you're making these calls. That is huge. That can lead to a 3, 5, 10x increase in your contact rate if it's just showing up as a clean number, or if it's showing up as your business when you make that call. Calling at the right times. If you call super late at night, or you're calling like late on Fridays, or you're calling, Sundays, there's going to be certain parts of the week that are less optimized than potentially like a Saturday morning or Monday to Friday morning. So, hitting some of the better time windows when you're more likely to get a hold of someone, especially based on the demographic that you're marketing to. Utilizing automated touch points. There's kind of a magic number of touch points, whether that's 10, 20, 30, the more the merrier, without a doubt. You don't want to harass someone, but you also want to stay in front of your leads and stay in front of your clients. I think a minimum of 10, and then putting them into kind of a drip follow-up is my minimum recommendation. You're obviously welcome to do more touch points than that. But I think if you're doing 10 and then you have some of this drip follow-up, I think you're going to see your contact rate go way, way up. And then having a virtual assistant who can help you who can help you make these calls and stay on top of your follow-up and make sure that contact rate is what it needs to be. It can be really tough to do all the things. And if you start to let it fall through the cracks, and that contact rate falls through the cracks, it might seem like, oh, didn't get to as many calls this week. And, I only got to contact, 1 out of 4 of my leads this week. That's, only got 25% of my leads on the phone this week. It might not seem like a big deal, but what I'm hearing is lost revenue. You're losing an incredible amount of revenue if you're only speaking to 1 out of 4 leads. Again, the bare minimum, in my opinion, is you should be trying to get 6 out of 10 leads on the phone. If you can get to 6 out of 10, I think you're doing good. If you can get to 8 out of 10, you are crushing it. You are doing really, really good.
Need more leads? You know where to find us. leadheroes.com.